You know, for decades, there's been one topic in Japan that was just considered unthinkable, a sacred taboo. Well, that taboo is now officially on the table. Today, we're diving into the incredibly sensitive and, frankly, increasingly urgent debate over whether Japan should even talk about having nuclear weapons.
And really, it all boils down to this one powerful question. Should a nation debate the undebatable? I mean, for Japan, the only country in history to suffer a nuclear attack, the very idea of possessing these weapons has been completely off limits. But the world is changing, and it's forcing a conversation that many people thought would and should never happen.
So you got to be asking, why now? What changed? Well, let's start with the political spark that actually brought this taboo out into the open. It really kicked off with some pretty bold comments from a minority political party, Sanseito. After they had a bit of electoral success, a newly elected member came out and called nuclear weapons the most cost-effective form of security. Then the party leader piled on, saying it's, quote, not good to declare we will never have them. Whoa. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Critics accused them of trampling on the feelings of atomic bomb survivors. And just like that, the undebatable was suddenly being debated out loud.
So what's the actual argument for having this discussion? Now, it's super important to understand this. The people on this side aren't necessarily saying Japan should go build a bomb tomorrow. Their point is a lot more fundamental. They're saying Japan can no longer afford to even avoid the conversation.
Okay, the case for opening this up is built on a foundation of some pretty stark realism. Proponents are looking around and they see growing aggression from Russia, they see China's massive military expansion, and of course, North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, which are getting better and better. They argue that just relying on the US nuclear umbrella is getting riskier by the day. And here's their key point. By refusing to even discuss other options, Japan is tying its own hands, removing any strategic flexibility, and in a real crisis, that could be catastrophic. Plus, let's be real, from a practical standpoint, Japan already has the advanced nuclear and rocket tech to make this happen. The capability is there.
This quote right here, it really gets to the core of their entire philosophy. The idea isn't that you build nukes to use them. You build them to prevent anyone from using them on you. So from this point of view, sealing off the discussion isn't some noble moral stand. It's actually a strategic weakness that forces Japan to completely depend on what other countries decide to do for its own survival.
But of course, that is only one side of this story. The argument against even having this debate is just as passionate, and it's rooted in history, in international law, and in a totally different idea of what real security looks like.
Those who oppose this debate, they warn that this is a truly perilous path. First, they say that just the act of discussing nukes sends a really dangerous signal to neighbors like China and North Korea and could easily kick off a regional arms race. Second, if this talk ever turned into action, Japan would be violating the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which would trigger absolutely crippling international sanctions. It could also blow up the very foundation of the U.S. alliance, which is basically built on the deal of American nuclear protection in exchange for Japan's non-nuclear policy. And finally, and this is the big one for many, they see it as a complete betrayal of Japan's unique moral duty to the world.
Now, this quote hits the nail on the head for the counterargument. It's a direct shot at the other side's whole premise. From this perspective, in the high-stakes chess game of global politics, talk is never cheap. A serious national debate is the signal, and it's not seen as smart strategic thinking, it's seen as a provocation that just ramps up tension instead of making anyone safer.
All right, so we've heard both sides lay out their case. Now let's see where they collide. We're going to break down the key points where these two arguments are in total opposition. But first, a quick little primer. You're going to hear the letters NPT a lot. That's the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Just think of it as the global rulebook, the cornerstone of all efforts to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. Japan signed it, which makes this whole debate incredibly complicated from an international law standpoint.
Okay, so the first major clash really comes down to this simple but incredibly deep question. On the world stage, is openly discussing getting nuclear weapons basically the same as deciding you're going to possess them? And here, you can just see this huge gap in how people see the world. On one side, the view is, hey, the NPT is a legal document. It bans having nukes and building them. It doesn't ban brainstorming. They just see it as responsible planning. But then you look at the other side. They're saying, are you kidding me? Global politics isn't a courtroom. A debate like this is seen as a flashing red light, a clear signal of intent, a preparatory stage that your rivals have to take seriously and react to.
The next major point of conflict is all about Japan's single most important security relationship, the alliance with the United States.
So, the big question is, how would this whole debate change things?
And here again, the predictions are polar opposites. It's fascinating. One side truly believes that having this discussion shows the U.S. that Japan is a mature, responsible ally who's thinking ahead about its own security, and that would actually make the alliance stronger. The other side says it does the exact opposite, that it yanks a thread that could unravel the whole thing by breaking that fundamental bargain of the alliance, U.S. protection for Japan's promise to stay non-nuclear.
And that brings us to what is easily the most emotional, the most historical point of conflict, one that is completely unique to Japan. Can the only victim of the atomic bomb ever consider possessing it?
This is really a clash between what you could call reality and responsibility. The pro-discussion side flips the script on the tragedy. They argue that being a victim gives Japan a special, deep understanding of why nuclear deterrence is so vital, and that its ultimate responsibility is to make sure an attack like that never, ever happens again, by any means necessary. But the other side sees this history as the source of a unique kind of soft power. They argue that Japan's moral authority on the world stage is itself a form of deterrent, an intangible shield that would be lost forever the moment it seriously considers the bomb. So, where does all this leave us? Well, what it reveals is a nation that's standing at a profound crossroads, facing a choice that goes way, way beyond just military hardware.
At the end of the day, this isn't just a debate about weapons. It is a fundamental clash between two incredibly powerful forces. On one hand, the push for pragmatic security in a world that feels more dangerous every day, and on the other, the pull of a deeply held national identity that was forged in the unimaginable tragedy of nuclear fire.
And that leaves us with a question that isn't just for Japan, but really for any nation. Where do you draw the line between your most sacred principles and your strategic survival? There are no easy answers here, but it's a question that Japan is now being forced to confront head-on. Thanks for joining us.